watched a show recently. Here's what I thought of Marvel's Echo. It actually has been a few weeks since I watched it. I'm hoping I remember enough of it. But here's the thing about that show, okay? Nobody's talking about it, okay? And there's a reason nobody's talking about it, because it's unremarkable. It's very unremarkable. It's not that interesting a show. And here's the thing, I actually had some positive expectations for Echo, but in the long run, it turned out to just be kind of disappointing, just because I had high expectations for it. The reason I had high expectations for it was because I was like, okay, well, this character is very similar to Daredevil, and also we're taking a lot of stuff from the Daredevil show, Daredevil mythos in general, and we're putting it in this show. And I'm like, okay, and also, it's not like, you can really tone this down and not do too much with it, right? Which is where a lot of Marvel stuff I feel like has really gone south, is they try to do way too much with it, and it doesn't feel like this nice self-contained story, and instead it turns into like 3 different stories, and it's building up to some other thing that's going to happen like 20 movies later. I mean, if we talk about the shows have been mostly okay, but I think they've been on a kick of kind of getting worse and not being good. So like the first few were good, like WandaVision was good, Loki was good. I even liked Hawkeye. A lot of people hated Hawkeye. If you didn't watch Hawkeye, by the way, this is basically spinning off from the Hawkeye show. So if you're like, who the hell is Echo? Is a character introduced in the Hawkeye show. She was a villain, basically. Spoilers, I guess, if you're watching this. I mean, you have to know what the character is. She's deaf, but she's like good at fighting. So she's basically like a sort of alternative replacement Daredevil. And so for this, I'm like, okay, you just do the Daredevil thing, you know, do the cool action sequences, do the cool choreography, like do all that stuff, and then like it'll at least be a semi-enjoyable show. This show is, I mean, it's fine. I'll say it's fine. There's a lot of things that I like about it, but there's a lot of things that could be done a lot better. First of all, the fight scenes, they're okay. They're not like Daredevil tier of like, oh, we have like a 20-minute uncut sequence of Daredevil fighting his way out of a prison, which is legendary. I mean, it's an absolute travesty that show got canceled, and it hasn't. They're not even bringing it back. Instead, they're like rebooting and doing their own Daredevil thing. But I don't trust them to do it now, because I'm like, this should have been the training. You know, this should have been the thing that's like, oh yeah, they can do it. Now, you know, and with this, it's not that good. It's not that good with the fight scenes, the choreography. Like, there's some scenes. I really only think there's like maybe 3 like big fight scenes in all of, like, I think it was 6 episodes. There's the one fight scene at the beginning where she fights, light spoilers, semi-spoil. I'm gonna spoil a lot of it, but this is a spoiler from episode 1 specifically, where she fights Daredevil. Like, the actual, you know, it's Charlie Cox is playing, well, I don't know who's in the suit fighting her at that time. It's probably a stunt double, I'd assume. I don't know. But, you know, she's fighting Daredevil, and it's like, it's clearly not one take. There's cuts all over the place, and it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of short. And, you know, it just wasn't that cool. It, like, should have been for something like this, where that's the whole appeal of the character. She's, you know, an epic fighter. You know, that's the whole reason I would sit down and watch this show, is like, those scenes should be stellar, and they're just like, yeah, it's just okay. It's not that good. So one of the first notes I actually wrote about this show was that they want her to basically be like this female Daredevil, right? There's version of Daredevil, but the difference is Daredevil is blind, and she is deaf. And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I feel like in the show Daredevil, in the Daredevil show, it's like they illustrate to us, like, through, you know, visuals, how Daredevil is able to fight as well as he is. It's like he has super hearing, and he has all this stuff where he can, like, you know, he's got like a radar sense, where you can like tell what's going on around him. It actually turns out that sight's not that important in your awareness of what's going on around you. And it's like, so he's very capable of fighting, And it's almost as if this disability doesn't really, like, stop him from being not only normal, but also exceptional. Well, I suppose I should be careful about the way that I word this. I've already worded it how I worded it, but I do want to say, when we're talking about, like, this character, so she's deaf, which is very different, and I feel like this is something they should have done in the show, which would have gone a long way to making the character a lot cooler, is show us how she's able to fight as well as she can. It's like, okay, hearing is not that important, but I feel like when you're in a fight scene, you have to trust sight instead, right? And that the problem is sight is just what's in front of you. The peripheral is only, like, I don't even think it's a full 180 degrees. But I think with hearing, that's the thing about hearing, is it's a peripheral sense. You can hear where things are coming from behind you. You can hear stuff coming up behind you. So if somebody comes up behind you and they've got, like, a bat and they're going to whack you in the head with it, it's like, oh, hearing helps. If you got super hearing, you can hear that coming. You don't need to see it, right? That's a big bonus for hearing. So I'm just, like, wondering, I'm like, okay, so how do we explain that she's got very limited peripheral sense? She can only see what's in front of her. It's like, is she able to fight somebody that's going to come up behind her and, like, hit her in the head with a bat? Is she able to take that on? Is there some way she can sense that? And I suppose you could make something up, like, oh, well, she can feel the vibrations in the floor. She can feel his footsteps coming at her, and she can feel the waves of, like, the bat flying through the air. But this is what I'm saying, is, like, sure, I'll buy that, but, like, it would have been cooler if they'd shown that or indicated that in some way in the show. Just would have made the character actually, you know, a lot cooler. Because right now I'm just, like, I'm questioning it, you know? Because, I don't know, I just feel like it would have been cooler if they explained that, that's all. I do like the vibe of the show. I really like small town vibes. I want to bring up Twin Peaks, but I'm like, it's not, obviously not, like, weird like Twin Peaks. But, like, Twin Peaks has those small town vibes, and I do like that. You have this, like, close-knit community, and you have, you know, everybody knows everybody else, and all of the drama in the town, you know, just gets spread throughout, and it's rapid. And I like the quirky characters. I really like the quirky characters, although I will say, I think one of the big problems with the show maybe is that it's too short. It doesn't give these characters maybe enough time to shine, really. You know, you only get, like, maybe one, like, highlight scene for each of them. There's her cousin. The cousin's big scene is that he when he's driving the truck for her, like, that's one episode. She's got the grandfather. He's got a couple scenes. I think there's the uncle. Oh, all these people are basically her family, by the way. Every character in this is, like, a family member of hers, which is part of the theme of her actual hero superpowers. She actually does get spoilers. She actually does get superpowers in this. But yeah, her grandma has like a few scenes with her, and a bunch of other people. I don't know. I just feel like I would have liked to spend more time with these characters, but we're kind of, like, barreling through this plot line. It's not a super complicated plot line. The basic gist of it is that at the end of Hawkeye, Echo shoots Kingpin. Kingpin's played by the same guy, by the way, Vincent D'Onofrio or something, I think is his name. She shoots him and assumes he's dead. And then she goes back to this small town where she grew up, because it's the only place she knows where else to go. She knows two places. She was a kid, and then she basically moved to the big city with her dad, because her dad's like a gangster who was working for the Kingpin. And then the Kingpin eventually kills her father, and then she sort of takes over the family business. Finds out the Kingpin was the one that killed her father, and then she shoots Kingpin, goes back to the small town. Okay, this is all happens before the show even starts, all right? So this is important. We note this all down. Well, okay, a lot of this is explained in the show, but it is sort of the exposition to, like, get you up to, like, okay, here's where we're at. This is all explained in episode 1, okay? One of my first thoughts, though, is, like, okay, like, if she knows that they're gonna come after her. Like, Kingpin's dudes are gonna come after her. Although I don't know why they would, necessarily, if she kills the Kingpin, isn't there just going to be a power vacuum, and they're just going to be like, oh, cool, well, which one of us is going to take over? Why would they care to, like, take her out? Maybe just that they're worried she would take them out, I guess. But I don't know. I feel like they'd be a little bit too distracted by the power vacuum, like you said. But I don't know. And it turns out in the show they established that, like, yeah, there's a bounty out on her, which is interesting because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, her going back to her hometown is like the most obvious place she could have gone to. It's like if they knew anything about her, they would know, A, she's either like hanging low in the city still, or like the only other place she knows about and has any, history with is her hometown. So it's obvious she would probably go back there. It's a little weird that they don't, nobody. Somehow though, I'm skipping around a little bit. Somehow though, the news of this bounty does reach a worker in the roller skating rink. Somehow he gets wind of this, and then I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get to that. I mean, no, I'm not really getting ahead of myself because I don't really have a lot to say, I guess. So that's one of the things that happens. He calls in the roller skate rink, and the guys show up, but they, like, don't believe him. They're like, oh, you're playing a joke on it, but they showed up anyways. And then they, like, kill him, and then they're about to kill her, because they do find her as she comes out, and this is, like, the second one of 2 big fight scenes in this entire show. She goes and fights people and starts smashing their heads into, like, pinball machines and stuff. It was pretty cool. But again, it's several cuts. They're very obvious cuts all over, cuts everywhere. I don't know. Clearly they're doing different angles and stuff, so it's very intentional. I guess that they just didn't want to, like. But I feel like with fight scenes like this, the cool choreographed fight scenes, it's like you want to establish that, like, these people are, like, actually fighting. And these are all, like, fluid motions. That just makes it cooler. Like, maybe I'm comparing it too much to Daredevil, and I'm just like, I just wanted Daredevil, and I was hoping this would be Daredevil, and it's not. They're basically called off when they're about to shoot her, because she does come out eventually, and they're like, oh, you are here, and then they're about to shoot her, and then they, Deus Ex Machina, they get called off, and they just leave. Just really weird. I don't know. If there was anything for me to question about this show, I think it would be that moment was kind of weird. It's like, okay, so they put a bounty on her. I guess they must have found out after the fact that, spoilers again, Kingpin is actually still alive. He didn't die, but he's got a big gnarly scar on his eyeball. And Kingpin must have called them in that moment and called them off and said, oh, don't shoot her. But it's like, I don't know, the timeline on that is a little iffy. It's like, did he send them after her? Or this must have them just finding out about this. Either that or Kingpin just heard that they were going after her, but they didn't even think she was there. I guess maybe they contacted him and were like, hey, we found her. And then he's like, all right, don't actually kill her. But then why, if, like, they were in contact, why wouldn't he have just said that before? Why was there even a bounty on her to kill her? Anybody could have come and showed up and killed her, but he's like, no, I don't actually want that. So it's like, okay, well, all right. It's the only thing. This is really the only, like, kind of thing that's spinning, making my gears spin. Of like, what does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. The other thing is they could have held her, and they don't. Instead, they leave it as kind of like a mystery as to why they were called off, which it turns out that just it's because Kingpin called it off and wanted to talk to her. But it's like, if that's the case, why didn't they hold her, like, in a prison cell or something, They have the power to, like, bind and tie her. Instead, they just let her go. It's like, doesn't make any sense, but whatever. So he kind of offers her a deal that if she comes back, that he'll let everything go and she'll be his, like, second-hand person. All she has to do is, like, come back with him. Of course, she doesn't do that. So Kingpin's like, all right, well, we're going to have a war then. And then, I mean, the whole thing, it just wraps up so quickly after that. It's, he basically, Kingpin comes back, he kidnaps a grandma, he kidnaps a sister, and then he goes to the parade, and then she just is, like, she goes to the parade, and they're there like in like a barn or something. There's like a weird. I feel like that scene's cut really weird, cause she's like in the parade, she's like walking around, and then all of a sudden she's just in the barn with these guys. She's like, let them go. It's like, what? How did she find them? it just ends up there all of a sudden. Then they have a fight. Okay. I'm really skipping over. I feel like I've skipped over so much because I'm already at the end. But basically, it's because she goes I'll go back a little bit. Okay, she goes to this small town, and she decides she's going to send Kingpin's men a message, and so she kind of hijacks a train and sets a bomb in it, and then blows up their armory, and then they retaliate, kind of. They actually don't really retaliate for that, I don't think. Because they only show up because the bounty gets called on. They called her uncle, who was basically supposed to be in charge of that, just kind of like yelled at him a little bit, I guess. But nothing really ever came of them, other than the fact that she destroyed their armory and she made a big hit to them. But her plan basically was to take over and become the new Kingpin. That obviously doesn't happen. But it is interesting, I guess, how her character is not really a hero. She's very much an anti-hero, if not just kind of a villain. If she has any sort of like redeeming qualities, I guess it's just her attachment to her family, although she initially tries to push her family away. Well, she does try to do that, but she's kind of justified in doing it because like her family kind of abandoned her after she ended up, getting in all of this trouble. She just wanted help. There's a really nice scene, a really nice emotional scene, which, by the way, I think actually is a highlight of this, for sure. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the way they do dialogue and conversations between Maya, who, aka Echo, her name is Maya, and like the other characters, and the way they're able to do these, like, she's fully signing, okay, and they will also sign, but also like say what they're, signing under their breath. But there's also subtitles and stuff, so you don't miss any conveyance. But I actually really like these scenes in particular. I think they're pretty well done, and I do applaud the character's ability to like express like the emotional weight that they're supposed to express in the scene, despite the fact that they're basically whispering what they're saying, and they're expressing their emotion through the signs that they're making, and their facial expressions. And I think that stuff's like all brilliant. I think that stuff's all really brilliantly done, and it does hit just as hard as it would if it was, people speaking. There's an especially good scene, I think, between her and the grandma, where she's talking to the grandma, and the grandma was like, starts saying all this stuff and being like, well, this is why I did what I did, and she's like explaining her whole deal, and Maya just tells her, you did all that for you didn't do anything for me, like, you suck. And I was like, oh man, that scene was great, brilliant, because it immediately shuts the grandma up, and it's like, oh yeah, she like basically abandons her granddaughter to this horrible like crime syndicate because she was angry at the father because it was the father's connections with the gang that got the mother killed, and so she blames the father for that. And then it ends up Maya kind of gets caught up in this revenge that really has nothing to do with her. Not revenge, but like resentment. And she, the grandma's like, oh yeah, you're right, that was pretty messed up of me to do that. And I liked how she expresses this anger, and it's very justified. Out of, I think, every scene in this, I feel like that conversation between her and the grandma is like the most like emotionally heavy that this show got. And I really, if nothing else, I really appreciated that scene. I lost my train of thought a little bit here. Okay, so I guess we'll just go back to the barn. Well, okay, so over the course of this is badly conveyed. I'm just gonna, on the nose, I'm gonna say that. Badly conveyed, her powers start unlocking. And basically she starts having visions of her ancestors. She has the vision of the one lady in the cave who brings her people out of the cave. It's all according to the. I have to look up the tribe name because it's been a really long time. 1 second. The Choctaw, which, according to like the what they say at the end of this show, there's like a little blurb on this that pops up on the screen. It's like, thank you to the Choctaw tribe for allowing us to represent you. That apparently this, I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know anything about it, but I'm assuming that this is representative of a real tribe and a real tribe's mythology, which is really cool. That's really cool. She's basically got a bunch of ancestors, and she starts having visions of them, and she starts like, I guess there's supposed to be like awakening powers within her. But I don't feel like it's super well conveyed, because the thing is, she's a good fighter before all of this. Like, in the first episode, she fights Daredevil. Basically, she doesn't win or lose, really. I think it's just kind of a standstill, I guess. So she's already a good fighter, but I think she's supposed to get, like, fighting abilities from them as well. Because I think the only one that's, like, I still don't feel like that one's super well shown, but she does have this ancestor who's like a really good shot, although that ancestor, when we see her in the flashback, seems to get that skill from her ancestor. So I don't know, I don't really, it's kind of a weird thing, but I guess it's just the idea of it is that the ancestors are like connected and they're very skilled. And so if you awaken as like the whatever, I don't know if they put a name to it. If you awaken with the ancestors' memories, you kind of get all of their skills and abilities. But then the other weird thing that is highlighted in the final episode when she's in the barn, which is like the third and only fight scene that I remember. There might have been another fight scene. I don't recall. I mean, there were a bunch in the like first episode that were like kind of, oh, this is basically the. I think they were reused from Hawkeye, right? I think there may have been like 1 or 2 in there that were like original new footage, but I don't remember. But basically this power allows her to take control of people that are related to her or share her blood. And that's like, I mean, it's very generous because it allows her like cousin. She uses basically her cousin as well, who's like, I mean, when you're talking about a cousin, that's like barely, like you share a grandparent, you know? So it's like, okay, so she can go, like that's, I don't know, that's pretty, it's branching out a bit on the tree there, you know, in terms of like familial connections. It's like, how far out on that branch can she go? Can she control second cousins, third cousins? I mean, I feel like you could be pretty crazy with it and be like, well, technically, on a certain level, if we trace everybody back to like a common ancestor, you know, everybody's related really in some way. It's a weird power. So the final fight scene is her basically controlling, I don't know if she's controlling them, so I guess she's controlling them. It's either that or like they're just filled with the spirit of their ancestors as well, and they're fighting on their own. But, like, the grandmother starts fighting, and then the sister starts fighting. She's not a sister, she's a cousin, but she calls her sister a lot. She starts fighting. And they win, and it's kind of silly. But I'm like, I don't really care much about this superpower. Okay? I feel like I could do without this superpower. And just have cool fight scenes. That's really what I wanted out of this, and that's not really what I got, so kind of just disappointed by that. I will say I am a Marvel Comics fan. I haven't said that yet. I've never heard of this character in the comics, which is not like super rare for me. There's a lot of Marvel characters that just kind of like slip past me in terms of me knowing who they are. But I feel like it's been a while since I feel like that's happened. This is like one of those characters, one of the few characters I feel like that I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of this character. You know, I'd even heard of America Chavez. I've even heard of her when they put her in Multiverse of Madness. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that character. I've seen her on stuff. You know, I know Miss Marvel. I know Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock's one of my favorite freaking characters. They just put him in Guardians 3. Well, they kind of made a joke out of him, which I wasn't super fond of because I really liked that character. But whatever. We're not talking about that. Basically, I don't know. I've never heard of this character, and that's not like I don't know. I just want to bring that up. So I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't know how accurate all of this is to her actual origin in the comic books. I don't know anything about that. I wasn't even entirely sure if she was a character that existed in the comic books or if they just like kind of made her up. You know, I still don't even really know. I have the page open. Maybe, yeah, she does exist. Okay. Oh, actually, this lore is very similar. Her first appearance was in a Daredevil comic in 1999. That's so interesting because I've never heard of this character. That's weird. I don't know what to say. 90s. I don't think I was reading a lot of comics into the 2000s. Well, yes, I obviously was, but I was reading older comics. I was reading like comics from the 80s. Is what I mean. Obviously, it doesn't make sense that I would be reading comics from the 90s because I would have been like at most 7. It's a weird superpower. I don't know that I care too much about this character moving forward. I liked the idea of her. I liked the concept going into it, and I like the actress herself and how she portrays the character for sure. She's very like stone-faced throughout this, which I'm pretty sure is an intentional decision. I think, you know, just given the nature of the character, she expresses herself through other ways. She's also kind of numb due to like emotionally a little bit numb due to her upbringing, and just how she has to put on this tough exterior. It's not even in an exterior. It's like to the core of the character. I feel like she's a very tough character. But yeah, she doesn't do a lot of growing or changing over this. She kind of just the characters point out that she didn't contact them. They're like, hey, we're family and you never contacted me. And she kind of feels bad that she never did that. They just kind of forgive her, I guess. And then she throws it back at them like, you guys never did anything for me. And then they all just get over it, I guess. And they just kind of like, oh, we're family and we all get along and we love each other. And then she shows up to the family barbecue at the end. They have a nice barbecue. Although it does seem that she's kind of gotten over this thing with the grandmother. Not necessarily gotten over the thing with the sister. They kind of have like a weird look at each other at the end. I think indicating that like, oh, there's still some tension between us. We're not fully over our thing, but I don't know. The show, that's about it. I mean, the show is fine. I mean, it's not. I'm not done talking, okay? But that's like that's the show, okay? It's fine. It's just not exceptional, and I feel like this show could have been something really great. So the things I like are the conversations, the dialogues with the sign language. I feel like those really stand out. And then I just like the setting of it, really. I like the setting. I like how all of the characters are sort of family members and they all are quirky characters. And that's it. That's what I liked about it. I think also Vincent D'Onofrio, that's his name, right? Let me double check that. Dude, on the notes, Vincent D'Onofrio, who is the same guy that played Kingpin in the original Daredevil show, which, by the way, I feel like that show has yet to be surpassed in terms of Marvel Cinematic Universe shows. That show is phenomenal. It's like, even to go back to that show, it shocks me every time how unbelievably good that show is, and how like above everything else that I've seen. How my kind of standards are like dipping over time, where it's like, okay, well this show wasn't so bad, and it's like you go back to that and you're like, oh damn, that was a goddamn good show though. I also really like Jessica Jones. I miss Jessica Jones a lot. That is something I do want to do at some point. It was actually something I was planning, was going through like every MCU show just for the heck of it, just because I feel like people don't talk. Like, I've seen every single MCU show just because it's fun for me to do that, even if the show's really bad. I don't know. I just like to follow really long threads. That's it's just a weird thing that I like to do, so I like to stick with stuff. I've watched The Runaways. I've watched the Inhumans show. I've watched Hellstrom, which is probably the most unknown show that nobody ever talks about or mentions. People forget that was an MCU show, I think, because it got one season and immediately got canceled. I've even seen that. And I can tell you that the highlights, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I would say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter just because, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like, early on, I feel like it kind of gets worse over time. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of goes downhill towards the end. And Agent Carter only got 2 seasons, so it never had a chance to really start getting bad. Those shows. And then I think just the Disney Plus, in terms of Disney Plus, it's just the first few shows. Like, Loki was good. WandaVision's good. I liked Hawkeye. I don't know why people... My friends really were like, oh, Hawkeye sucks. And every time I've heard talk about it online, I've heard a lot of people say, well, Hawkeye sucked. I'm like, I liked Hawkeye. Why does everybody think that show sucked? Maybe that's one I should rewatch, but I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. But I didn't really like any of the other shows so much, just the She-Hulk show, which is kind of notorious. Moon Knight. Moon Knight I was so stoked for, dude. And then they just absolutely, like, they didn't do the character, like, if you're gonna do a Moon Knight show, dude, you can't have it be this silly Marvel nonsense, okay? Moon Knight is like... Okay, remember in the X-Men film universe, where they did Deadpool, and they were like, oh, we gotta make Deadpool R-rated, or it won't work. And to make Deadpool R-rated, holy shit, the movie works! That's what Moon Knight needed. Moon Knight needed to go all out. And I'm like, I guess just on the Disney Plus platform, because it's a Disney Plus show, they don't want to put, like, horrible, violence. But, like, that's what that's the appeal of Moon Knight. Don't make a Moon Knight show if you're not going to do it. Like, it made me mad, dude. It made me, like, actually upset to watch that show. And then, Logan? You remember Logan? The only R-rated, like, Wolverine movie was phenomenal. It, like, respected, it knew what it was doing. And it's like, that's what Moon Knight needed to do, dude. I feel like there should be an R-rated MCU show. We need to get there. This could have been it. You've got, like, a villain. She's a villain. She's not, like, a good person, really. She's kind of flawed. I mean, she's not really a bad person, either. She's kind of just, like, whatever. It's like, I get what she's trying to do. Anyways, Vincent D'Onofrio in this. It's like the dude was born to play the Kingpin. Every scene, he's like brilliant in every scene that he does. Just the quiet, calm, like, violence that the guy is constantly holding back with this, like, genuine, terrifying emotion that he puts forward in, like, expressing that he does actually care about the things that he says that he cares about, but he's like, hey, if things don't go the way that, like, I'm expecting them to, I'm not, it's over. We're going to war. Like, this dude's brilliant, and they do a good job with showing him on this show and having the correct gravitas for him to really shine in the role. So all of that stuff, brilliant. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's it for what I had to say about Echo. I guess now that we're here, I kind of want to talk more broadly about the MCU. I'm a fan of the MCU. I was a fan. I feel like I haven't, like a lot of people, I feel like have kind of made the same sentiment that I'm about to make, which is just, I feel like after Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, it's like, I didn't feel like I don't know if I care anymore. And then I started watching some of the projects, and I'm like, oh, some of this stuff's good. Like okay, some of the shows were good. I would argue that I think most of the movies post Endgame are not very good. I don't think there's any that I've specifically liked, except for I liked Spider-Man No Way Home, although a lot of people I've heard say actually that movie's actually not that good. You just have rose-tinted glasses and you need to rewatch it. I've heard that a sentiment a lot. Like, that might be true, but I don't want to rewatch it. So I'm just gonna accept that I liked it when it came out, and that's it. And then Guardians 3, which just came out recently, was pretty good. Everything else, don't care. It's all been kind of bad. I've watched it. Like, I'll watch. The thing is, I don't pay to go see these in theaters anymore. I haven't. The Infinity War, I think Endgame was the last one I went and saw in theater. No, I saw Black Widow. Actually, I didn't think Black Widow was that bad compared to a lot of other movies. That one got attacked, and I feel like it was a little bit unfair. I liked the character work. If nothing else, I liked the character work. I liked the characters in it. I thought it was a good vibe. The introduction of Florence Pugh in that. Florence Pugh's character. Really like her. She was great in that. The rest of the movies, it's just like they're trying to like shove too much into it and just like build up build up to something that I'm like, I don't care. Like, sell me on this thing that I'm supposed to care about. I don't know. They're building up to. They were building up to like two things. Because they were building up to Kang the Conqueror, Kang the Destroyer, which is all well and good. Sure, I guess. Although, when I saw it, Quantumania, I think, is the introduction of him in the actual movies. That was lame. that was one of the worst movies, man. The other thing I think they're building up to is the King in Black. I feel like they're gonna do like King in Black, because I feel like with Thor: Love and Thunder, there were a lot of elements of that story that you need in order to get to King in Black, which is a more recent like event. So I feel like we're gonna get that. I feel like they're gonna pull the Venom stuff in at some point. I don't know. They seem to want to do Kang right now, and it's like, all right, you do Kang. I haven't seen the Marvels yet. Like I said, I don't go see these things in theaters. I don't care anymore to do that. So I usually just wait for them to come out on streaming, and then I'll watch it. The Marvels, I thought, was like, as an idea, just poorly conceived. I'm like, who's this movie for? First of all, nobody even really liked the first Captain Marvel movie. You don't hear anybody raving about how much they loved Captain Marvel, the first Captain Marvel movie. In fact, I feel like most people complain about how bad the first Captain Marvel movie. Most people complain about Brie Larson. They also complain about like how she just shows up in Avengers Endgame and just saves the day, and just she just shoots her way through Thanos. It's the thing in the comic books. I feel like they did a lot is for some reason trying to like build up Captain Marvel, but like the character has never really been that popular. It's never been that popular. I'm sorry to say it. It continues to not be that popular, but they seem to like. I feel like, I don't know. It's boardrooms that seem convinced that Captain Marvel is like this hit. She's a hit if we could just do it right. If we could just do it right, everybody will love this character. But it's like, no, she's kind of a bummer. She's not like super fun. It's like, I feel like there's a way to do that. This is way off topic, but at the same time, I don't know what this point of this podcast is, so I'm allowed to go off topic and make up new topics to talk about as much as I want. I'm allowed to do that. Okay? I feel like there's a way to do the character fun, but you have to like lean into, maybe not even fun, but like the character has like a really awful like history, you know, in the actual comic books. Is like, if you lean into her like the stuff she's been through as Miss Marvel, it's a lot of shit she's had to put up with, and it's like, the thing is, in the MCU, there's none of that. She didn't go through any of that. But there's like years and years and years of trauma and resentment building up to this character kind of becoming the character that she is now. Just kind of like ultra serious, very full of, maybe not full of herself, self-assured, I guess is maybe the right word. She's very sure of herself, self-assured, sure of herself. I guess that means the same thing. She's very stubborn, you know. She thinks her way, and she doesn't deal with people very well. So she is like inherently, the character is very unlikable. She's kind of supposed to be, because those people in real life are kind of unlikable. But that's the character. You kind of have to play on that in some way. But it's hard to like make that character like a lead of something and have that be like endearing. A lot of people like to compare it to kind of Iron Man, whereas Iron Man kind of has this. But Iron Man, it's not the same, because Iron Man is like an asshole, but he kind of just doesn't care. A lot of it is just like, oh, I don't care. You know, it's not Captain Marvel's whole thing. It's not that she doesn't care. It's that she's too self-assured, I guess, is the way. It's the best way to describe that. It's just not. It's not at all the same. Yeah, but I feel like the Marvels. I haven't seen it, by the way. I'm talking shit about something I haven't seen, but it's just because I thought the idea was really bad. You have the other girl. You have Miss Marvel, obviously, which I actually thought a while back of like making a video talking about her, the show Miss Marvel, because I didn't really care for it too much. It's a show I've heard a lot of people rave about, like, oh, this show is so good. But I felt two ways about it. For one, I thought the villains were some of the worst villains we've ever had. They're so stupid. They're just like, oh, we'll get Miss Marvel to like help us get back to our world, and then she like goes to her brother's wedding like a couple days later, and they're like, she's not helping us. We have to fight her. We have to kill her now. I'm like, what does that do for you? I mean, for one, it just makes you enemies, and now she's not gonna want to help you because you like attacked her after you tried to get her to help you. It's like, don't just because she didn't like fix your problem that you've been dealing with for like centuries. It's just dumb. It's just a really dumb villain plotline, villain arc. Anyways, the other thing was I felt like it was kind of at odds with itself in terms of its cultural stuff. There's like a scene in it where she's in like a mosque, and obviously women in the mosques are behind like a partition, whereas the men sit in the front, in front of the guy preaching. And she like yells at the guy when he like tells them to shut up because they're making too much noise behind the partition. And she's like, well, if we didn't have to sit back here behind this partition, maybe we could hear what's going on. And I'm like, man, that's Islam. That's what they do. And that's what they do. Well, what are you like? Are we celebrating that cultural aspect, or are we being like, well, it's good, but we don't like this? It's like, it's weird. And I've also felt like a lot of people have said it's not actually a good portrayal of like actual like Muslim culture like within America. It's actually pretty off. So I don't know. That's my thoughts about it, I guess, as somebody who's somewhat ill-informed, I guess, on the subject. But so we have that character, and she's the second character, and then the third character is Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau, is her name Rambeau? Monica Rambeau. Oh, but it's spelled weird. So Monica Rambeau, and this is the thing, is I feel like most people who are not like super into the MCU are not gonna know who this character is at all. They're like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't think anybody I know is gonna know who this is. Like, they're gonna remember this character, and she has been in the MCU. It's just like you kind of have to be like really in a little deep. I mean, if you saw Captain Marvel, she's in that, but she's a little girl in that. She's basically the daughter of Captain Marvel's like friend, and she's a little girl in that. And then the only other appearance, well, there's two other appearances. There's one is in WandaVision, which is the show, the Disney Plus show. Where she gets her powers initially, but you might just completely forget that character even existed because she's not like super important to the show. I mean, I guess she's the one that like ultimately solves the problem, but the show's not really about her, you know. And then the third kind of appearance, I guess, is Multiverse of Madness, where I believe she's... I gotta double check that. Oh no, okay, so it wasn't Monica Rambeau. It's Maria. It's her mother. Her mother was the one of the Illuminati members in Multiverse of Madness. Okay. Okay. So those are the three things. I feel like that's kind of like, I don't know. It's just not, to me, like star power, I guess. It's not like a character that everybody's like, oh, I'm so excited to see more of this character. It's just like, most people probably don't even remember that character. I don't know. I'm sorry to say it, but I think that's true. So I'm like, okay, the Marvels. So it's like Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel was only in a TV show, which was just kind of okay. And then the original movie, Captain Marvel, was kind of bad. It's like, why? Whose idea was this? Like, what's the point? What was the point of this movie? What did they want to do with this movie? What did they expect to get out of this movie? Anyways, I haven't seen it. Well, I'll watch it when it comes out on Disney Plus. Still not out yet. I'm waiting for it, and then I'll watch it. I don't feel like it's gonna be very good, and I feel like the MCU has been on the downwards trends lately. I'll keep watching them. What If came out, season 2. I kind of hate that show. I feel like I hate that show. I watched the first season. I don't like two things about it. One thing is, I don't like the ideas. I feel like they have a lot of ideas that are really dumb, just because they can't do a lot of really interesting things, I guess. Like they have 30 minutes to like write something, so a lot of the ideas are just like, what if this character was actually this character? And it's like, I don't care if that happened, okay? It didn't happen, so I don't care. They need to go crazier with it, and they're not going crazy enough with it. And then the other thing that's weird about it is I don't like the joke. They really like ham up the Marvel humor to like 11, so it's just annoying. It's like really annoying. And I also just hate it when they have like these characters and they'll like reproduce like movie scenes. So it's like you're seeing that like actor, that real life actor portraying the character, and then they do like a weird thing where they like have the character like do these like cartoony-ish things, and it's just like super uncanny. I don't like that at all. That really like bothers me when they do like cartoony things, even though I'm like, that's a real person. You made them do a weird face. I don't like that. But I guess it's kind of like ultimately a very harmless show. Yeah, I guess that's my feelings on Echo in the MCU. I don't know what I'm doing with this series. I'm gonna put this out and see how this does. But like the thing is like how often should I be doing these? I have a bad habit of like, once I get the idea to like do something, I have a bad habit of doing it too much. To the point where like I like force it, a little bit, and I have bad ideas and then I force it. And I'm like, well, I gotta make the video. I haven't made one in a long time. I just don't have any good ideas, and then I put something out and it's just bad. So I don't know. It's something where it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'd have to pace myself with it a little bit and like only really do something if like there's something interesting that strikes my fancy to talk about. I don't even know if this show is interesting enough for me to really talk about, but there you go. You get a little taste of it, what that would look like. We'll just end it there, I guess. That's Echo. That's my thoughts on the MCU. Oh, I also I didn't actually like Endgame all that much. I want to say that. I want to put that on the record. Endgame was kind of a disappointment. Because Infinity War felt like, oh, they were building to this, and then it's like, oh, there it is, it's happening. It felt so clever and good. And then I got to Endgame, it's like, oh, it's like they were floundering to try to figure out how to solve this problem, and they just completely shifted directions to make it like a kind of clip show type deal. And then they were like, it became like too meta, because then it was like, oh, we have to write out Captain America and Iron Man so we have to give them big scenes, and it's just like, ugh. It felt super manufactured. I don't know. It's like representative of how far we've come, and it's just like it wasn't a good story. It just was a bad story, and the time travel was dumb in it. And here we are. Okay, I'll keep doing MCU shows. Let me know if I should do that idea that I had where I would just go through like MCU shows by like release. So I believe we'd start with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I'd just be like, all right, here's how I felt. I'd probably rewatch it for sure. Like season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then I just do like a review of it. Could dip into older stuff and do that. I don't know. I might do it. I don't know. Let me know. I'll do the Percy Jackson one. I really don't know what I'm going to do for it though. I mentioned before that like I can't make fun of it like I did in the original episode, because it probably won't feel that way anymore, at least after rewatching episodes 1 through 4. I'm like, the show's kind of good, but I can't also just explain it again, you know. I guess I could react to it, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. We'll see. Yeah, alright, well, goodbye.